title on reflection. I think, given even since we planned this, there's been various changes, so very timely, I think. For those that don't know me, I'm Cassandra. I'm part of the policy team here at SFHA. I'm delighted to have you all joining us here this afternoon. Also delighted we've got some great speakers who are kind of well placed to speak to this topic. So from Utility Aid, so we have William Campbell, who's Commercial Director, and Emily Berry, Partnerships Manager. They'll both be doing a bit of a presentation for you. We also have Sally-Ann Beaver on the call, who is Sales Director also at Utility Aid. So she'll be here to kind of answer any questions that come up as we go through. So when you join the session today, your microphone will be muted. When we get to the Q&A part, if you would like to ask a question yourself, then obviously you'll be invited to unmute yourself and ask your question directly. We do also have the chat function, which you can use to type questions in there to the speakers. That might be kind of better in terms of when we're going through the presentation. If there's anything that comes up or even any kind of comments, then please post those in there as we go through, and we'll do our best to come back to those at the end and make sure that they are all answered for you. We hope you'll be comfortable having your video on, but that's not essential, so up to yourselves. You can turn that on or off in the taskbar. So I'm struggling with my words today. And also just to let you know, we are recording the session and that will be shared after today with the attendees. So I think that is everything from me for now. Thank you again for joining us, and I will hand over swiftly to our presenters.
Thank you, Cassandra, and hello everybody. Before I get started, let me just share my screen. Bear with me just 1 second. Hopefully you can all see this now in front of you. So hello everyone, thank you so much for coming along today and seeing us. I'm Emily Berry, I'm Partnership Manager at Utility Aid, and today we're going to be taking you through a couple of topics to do with the energy industry and how to navigate the ever-changing world of it. So to give you an overview of the agenda for today, we're going to shortly meet the speakers, so I'll give you a bit of background of who's going to be going over the presentation today. We're going to go through updates in the markets and what we can expect to see for the rest of the year, market movements and securing prices. We'll then do a section on the energy bill discount scheme and what that means for you, followed by billing queries and potential areas of recovery, energy saving tips, a bit of information about a discovery document service that is available, and also collective purchasing and voids. And at the end, we will also have a more in-depth Q&A session if anyone's got any questions they want to voice together in a collective. So as Cassandra has already said, I'm joined today by William Campbell, who's our Commercial Director. Billy's going to be helping me do the presentation today, so you'll hear from him shortly. And then we also have Sally-Ann Beaver, who is our Sales Director, who will be taking questions in the chat box. So if you've got any burning questions that you don't want to forget, put them in the chat and Sally-Ann will be able to answer them straight away for you. So to begin with, what we wanted to start off with was a view of what's going on in the world of energy in relation to energy markets. So I'm going to start the afternoon off with a very scary chart to look at, but don't worry, we're going to go through it together, so it's not that scary. So the chart here above at the top shows the price history for major energy commodities since the beginning of 2006. And we can see on this chart here that it's showing the peaks in August. And then we're going to show you as well the lower graph here showing the dramatic volatility we've seen and the ever-changing and ever-increasing prices over the last 6 months. So moving on to where we started in 2023 and how that looked, we actually had a warmer winter than we expected. So we actually saw wholesale energy prices dip in reaction to that. And secondly, we also saw wholesale prices dip as well due to economic difficulties that were being faced in China, and usually they are a big market driver. So whilst prices did take a dip in the wholesale market, several sources reported that high energy prices will be a feature for us to experience for the next decade. And there are a couple of reasons why for that. One of them is that, unfortunately, Europe allowed itself to become dependent on Russian gas. So we can see here on this slide in the bottom right how we look at that now coming into 2023. So We were reliant on Russian gas. However, coming into this year, we can see that actually where imports of gas have come from. And the main ones that it's come from are actually imports from Norway, Holland, and Belgium. And we can actually see a significant increase in liquefied natural gas. So moving on from where we came to entering into 2023, it's encouraging to know that we're not reliant on Russian gas anymore. However, there are a couple of issues with us relying on and increasing our reliance on imports from LNG supplies. And the main reason for this is because LNG flows to the highest bidder. So whoever is paying more, LNG will go to. And the concern for that we have to take into consideration is global warming. So we will be competing with and against other countries who are trying to buy these supplies. There's a couple of other things to take into consideration as well this year. One of them is storage capacity, which is also increasing. So we've seen that Centrica has recommissioned the North Sea rough storage facility this year. And this means that there will be a higher demand for gas over the summer to fill this up, which suggests that overall prices are likely to be more stable. So you hopefully won't experience what you experienced last year with not being able to get prices from providers. However, they are expected to still remain relatively high. Gas-fired electricity generation still makes up to 40% of the UK's electricity production, and that sets the price for the market, which we can see on the previous slides with the charts at the beginning. However, on the positive side, it's not all doom and gloom, this presentation, I promise. The proportion of renewable generation continues to increase, and when the wind really picks up, it becomes the highest single contributor on the market. Billy, I didn't know if you wanted to add any pieces to these slides.
Yeah, a couple of things which are interesting. Centrica, being the American owners of British Gas and Scottish Gas, have opened North Sea Rough, which means that LNG supplies can flow into there and be stored. Now, with the war in Ukraine having no sight of ending soon, I think it's interesting that we had a record number of American imports of LNG and ships arriving on our shores, considering they'd opened up a storage. So I've been asked before, if we're going to get so much LNG into the country, or into the UK, sorry, does that mean the prices are going to go down? Well, not really, no. It just means that the people that are selling that gas, as Emily pointed out, it goes to the highest bidder. It means the prices will remain as they are, if not go higher. So it doesn't help us that we're getting more supply in. What it does mean is that those supplies will be more expensive and more profitable to the providers. So that's something on a macro scale to bear in mind.
Thank you, Billy. So this takes us on to nicely market movements and securing prices. One of the reasons that we wanted to cover this subject specifically in this presentation today is because we do get asked a lot about when's the best time to secure a price, and is there any deadlines that I need to be aware of with market movements. So market prices at the moment move quickly than what they ever have before. So securing a deal that is right for you and your organization, it's important to consider a couple of points when making that decision. So when you receive prices, they are based on the same day market price. So they are valid on that day until 4:30 p.m. To ensure that you secure that deal, the chosen price that you wanted, you should look to submit paperwork back to the provider or the brokerage an hour prior, otherwise you risk losing that price. So that's something really important to take into consideration when reviewing your current procurement measures. If a price given to you has not been given with a timeline or a notice to say what time it needs to be returned to secure it, it's highly likely that a risk premium has been added to that price, and that's why it's stable for a longer period of time. A good example of what that could look like if you, for example, were looking at comparisons online, for example, and they're valid for a longer period of time, it could be because there's a risk premium given that provide a little bit more wiggle room to keep that price available for you. So if you want something that's truly bespoke and truly effective for your organisation, it's best to make sure you have provisions in place to secure something on the date before 4:30 p.m. And also there's another consideration to take in this point here as well, and that's delegating your authorities for signing if you can. So if you find it difficult to get everyone together on a certain day to make a decision, we suggest maybe putting things in place or procedures in place to make that process easier to attain a 4:30 deadline. We're now going to go through energy discount scheme and how that works in practice. So this year we've done a lot of work on the energy discount scheme and trying to explain what it means in practice for organisations who are going to be affected. So for the next couple of slides, we're going to go through what it actually means, how it works in practice, and if you've got any questions at all, please feel free to pop them in the chat, or we can talk about them at the end. So the energy bill discount scheme that we've had announced will commence from the 1st of April 2023, and it will finish on the 31st of March 2024. The new scheme is available to everyone on a non-domestic contract. So that does include charities, businesses, and also schools, hospitals and care homes, and of course housing associations. And there's a couple of things to take into consideration with this scheme, and there is an eligibility criteria attached to it, and this is as follows. So it will be applicable to anybody who is on an existing fixed price contract that was agreed on or after the 1st of December 21, signing a new fixed price contract on a deemed or out of contract or standard variable tariff, so anything that's not already fixed, or on a flexible purchase or similar contract. So if you are eligible and you fall into one of those criterias, you should now receive from the 1st of April a per unit discount to the energy bills during the 12-month period, so from April 23 to March 24. And this is subject to a maximum discount. So we wanted to put a bit of information here about what that maximum discount means and how that works in practice. So the relative discount will be applied if wholesale prices are above a certain price threshold. So for non-domestic energy users, these maximum discounts have been set at the following. So electricity is £19.61 per megawatt hour, which equals 1.961 pence per kilowatt hour. And the government supported base price for wholesale electricity has increased from 21.1 pence per kilowatt hour to 30.2 pence per kilowatt hour. And on gas, we're looking at £6.97 per megawatt hour, which equals 0.697 pence per kilowatt hour. And the government supported base price for wholesale gas has increased from 7.5 pence per kilowatt hour to 10.7 pence per kilowatt hour. If you've got any questions on this, please do feel free to put them in the chat. We'll speak about it at the end. We know it is quite a lot to take in, so if you've got any questions, feel free to put them through. There are a couple of things that we wanted to sum up on and also go into the energy and trade intensive industries section as well that was announced. So in terms of the energy bill discount scheme, the key things to remember is the maximum discount that can be received is 1.961 pence per kilowatt hour for electricity and 0.697 for gas. Suppliers will automatically apply these reductions if you're applicable to your bills. So if you do get any calls saying you have to fill a form out or you need to apply, please do ignore those. And it will affect anyone who is on an existing fixed price contract that has been agreed on or after the 1st of December 21. Energy trade and intensive industries is a separate section that we've been reviewing and taking people through as much as we can, because it was something that was later added on, and I believe we're still waiting on some further information. But eligible energy intensive trade industries will have to apply for a high level of support. And basically what's been published so far is this will affect library and archive activities, museum activities, operation of historical sites and buildings and similar visitor attractions, botanical and zoological gardens, and nature reserve activities. We have had quite a few housing providers get in touch with us and ask us if this is applicable for them. At this moment in time, I believe we're still waiting on further information to come forward. But what you have to take into consideration with this is that this is specifically for large users of energy. So we're talking like factories, that kind of level we're looking at here. And you do have to apply for it separately. So if you've got any questions on that or just want some help and support in applying for it, if you believe it's appropriate, then please get in touch and we'll be able to take you through that. Which takes us on to the positive part of the presentation. So what can I do to reduce utility costs? So we know that energy prices, as we've discussed earlier, are continuing to increase, and we are expected to see them continue to be high in the summer due to us looking at refilling Centrica. So what I would suggest doing wherever possible within your organisation is looking at how you can make reductions to your current utility expenditure. So the first things to take into consideration is checking your current energy bills for any discrepancies or estimates. You would be surprised how many people come to us after the fact and say they've checked a couple of things on their invoices and actually there are charges on there that aren't necessarily correct. It's really important as well to look at things like metering charges and also look at ways in which you can reduce your on-site energy use or you're reducing your energy wastage wherever possible. So we're going to start off by looking at billing discrepancies and estimates. So to date at Utility Aid, we have recovered over 4.7 million in supplier overcharges for our customers, just based on inaccuracies on utility bills. When we've had a discussion with our head of invoice validation, they mentioned that the two most common overcharges we see on customer bills are in fact VAT and climate change levy incorrect charges and also estimated readings. So with estimated readings, the main thing to remember is that suppliers only need to read your meter once every 2 years. So if you currently do not have a smart meter fitted at all of your sites or you're experiencing problems with your smart metering systems, you might be being billed to estimates rather than actuals. So wherever possible, we would recommend looking at getting smart meters installed if you haven't already. In addition to that, we would recommend as well, if you can, keeping a log of any usage that you have on site if you haven't already got smart metering. So that would involve taking a reading at the start or end of every month and then reviewing that data as across a 12-month period to see if there are any anomalies that crop up. Billy, I didn't know if you wanted to touch on the point with smart meters about SMET2 meters, because there's been a lot of people, especially in the housing world, where they've been experiencing problems with smart metering.
Sure. So smart meter or AMR, automated meter reading, the only hardware that you should be thinking about putting into your sites are SMET2 meters. That's SMET, the number 2. They can be read by all suppliers across the UK and can be switched between suppliers. So that means if you leave one supplier and go to another supplier, it won't revert to being a dumb meter. Let's remember, this is my opinion, but it's quite a strong opinion after 20 years in the space. We really do need a smart grid so that everything can be accurate. All the data we have, that will help the generators generate the right amounts of power at the right times and the distributors to understand what's happening with the market. So a smart grid is the future. So please consider fitting smart wherever you can. They don't necessarily always provide accurate readings, so checks have to be done, but 9 times out of 10, they're really, really useful.
Thank you, Billy. The other area to take into consideration with billing discrepancies is VAT and climate change levy charges that are on your bills. So usually on a utility bill, VAT and climate change levy are actually linked together. So it's really important to make sure you're paying the correct amount on your invoices. If you do qualify for a reduced rate of VAT, it's important to let your supplier know sooner rather than later. Usually they will provide you with a VAT declaration form to complete and return to them, but you have to be aware that each supplier works differently. So some suppliers will backdate the invoices if an incorrect figure is found right back to the contract start date, whereas other suppliers will only go back a month or so. So if you're not sure, go back and have a check, or ask someone to check for you so you can get that changed and then refunded.
Sorry, Emily, just to say, to add to that, I would consider housing providers, landlord suppliers should all be on the 5% rate of VAT, and that's down to de minimis. So the amount of energy you use on that landlord supply shouldn't ever bring it into a 20% mark. So please take a look at that and make sure that you're on the right VAT rate.
Thank you, Billy. So moving on to another area which is always worth considering and having a look at in terms of where you can make initial potential areas of cost recovery is your metering charges. So many organisations that we have worked with are paying up to 60% more than what they need to on something called a MOP contract. So a MOP contract starts for Meter Operator Agreement, and a meter operator in the UK energy industry is an organisation that's responsible for installing and maintaining electricity meters. And a meter operator agreement is a legal requirement for all half-hourly electricity supplied meters. So if you have a half-hourly meter, which we will go into how you would identify that if you're not too sure, this is something to definitely take into consideration in checking. It covers the supply of the meter and the maintenance and the cost associated with sending consumption data to the energy suppliers for you. And it's a contract that is usually separate from any additional or main electricity contracts in place. So what you can do now is you're able to appoint your own meter operator rather than simply going with the supplier's choice of who they would like to place the business with. Usually when that happens, as a supplier chooses it, the cost is often hidden in the supplier's standing charge. So that's where the additional cost can usually be found. What we can do for you, if you wanted us to, or if you wanted to have an organisation look at it, is we can actually advise you on where you can make possible cost reductions. But as a starting point, best thing to do is to check your existing meters on your utility bills. Usually on the second page on the breakdown, you can identify if you have one of these meters by looking for the half-hourly indicator, which we've got here. So if you find this on your invoice, this is your supply number. If it begins with a 00 at the top and it looks like this, then you have a half-hourly meter, and this is something that you can then look into to see if there's any potential areas of cost recovery. So if you're going to do something after this call, I would highly recommend doing that and checking your readings and your VAT on your invoices. This moves us on to reducing energy usage. So in addition to looking at your bills and seeing if there's any areas of potential cost recovery, another area to take into consideration is your energy consumption for all of your buildings and sites. So you need to keep an eye on your organisation in the same way you do when it comes to the energy use that you have at home. And it's not just good for the environment, it can make a huge financial difference too. So we're going to take you through some of our top tips in starting this process. It can seem quite daunting at the start, so we wanted to provide you with some additional information on this. So the first thing you want to do in terms of making a change to your consumption is look at creating a culture, so where everybody is involved and everybody's on board. So use organisation-wide meetings to brainstorm ideas and consider creating an energy champion to keep communicating about the differences you're making financially and environmentally. And it could just be something as small as if somebody's going to go and make a cup of tea just for one person, they fill up the cup with water and then put that in the kettle and then turn the kettle on rather than filling a whole kettle worth. Or it could be something more in depth where you decide to enroll energy champions in the organisation who monitor the consumption and make changes to behaviour on site. Put an AMR on your wish list. So Billy has already discussed this. So an automated meter reader, that device will allow you to monitor your consumption, and you can then get a better understanding of your usage patterns over the next 12 months and make better decisions on saving money and saving any wasted energy usage. So pick your energy firm wisely. So check you're getting value for money. And if your tariff has dual fuel rates, it may be prudent to carry out certain tasks during off-peak times. Beware of the energy ghost pass. So phantom energy is used by equipment plugged in on site, but it's not in use. So an example could be that you've got your TV on, your Skybox on, but you're not actually using them, but they're on standby. So a suggestion in terms of change of behavior, which is something you could get the energy champion to do, is get everyone to switch off everything that's not non-essential and not in use at the end of every day. And finally, controlling the temperature. So heating only areas that need to be heated, ventilation, air conditioning can account for up to 60% of energy costs. So think about setting temperature controls, which only operate below 23 degrees, and making changes that way. Again, this is something you can get the team involved in and get people making checks on. Last couple of points on energy saving tips. So only heating areas that are being used at the time. Check your thermostats regularly. Check for drafts and stop them if you can, and monitor your energy usage. Very, very key to start with is monitoring that usage and making sure that you're seeing any peaks or anomalies. Provide meter readings and keep a record, and deal with your base load, so switching off all non-essential equipment every day. Billy, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to these slides on energy saving tips and being mindful of your energy usage.
Yeah, it sounds too simple to actually make a difference, but if everybody in the UK turned off their standbys, so unplug stuff, you probably have enough power to generate the NHS hospitals. So it's all about collaboration and working together to make a difference, but we have to start with the one. We've got to start somewhere. That will also make an environmental, have an environmental impact, which we all know is quite important. The last line there of deal with your base load. If you reduce your base load, you can probably reduce across the board your peak loads by up to 10%. The original figures for fitting AMR and monitoring your energy consumption stated that you would save between 5 and 25%, depending on how you looked at it. So your reads, you can either get day plus one, so you could look tomorrow at the energy you use today, or you could look at it in a month's time at the end of the month and look at those daily usage patterns. So I think it sounds too simple to be true, but if we all start making these changes and share the knowledge with the SFHA, let them know if it's made a difference, and please let us know, because the more people that do it, the better off we'll all be.
Thank you, Billy. Which takes us nicely on to reducing on-site energy usage, in particular looking at kind of reviews that you can undertake that can make a difference. So we always recommend to people in the first stage is to try and do all the behavioural things first, as that's something that's not a cost necessarily to you up front, but it's something that can make a huge difference, as Billy's just outlined, in terms of your base load and reducing that cost. What you want to do after that point is start looking at ways in which you can start your journey to net zero. We have been approached numerous times this year asking questions about how do I start this journey? It's quite a daunting task, and what's the best way to look at starting and getting that in place. So we know it's daunting, and we usually recommend beginning by reviewing your current usage, as we stated previously, and base load, and move on to then undertaking a discovery document or a survey that will then help you in making strategic decisions on investment to reduce your energy use further or reduce energy wastage further. It will then determine the potential for microgeneration across the estate and the impact on your carbon, and decide on a timeline of improvement measures to align with your maintenance/improvement budgets. It has to be something that's cost effective. So some people sometimes may have set themselves net zero targets that have been too short and actually need to be a bit longer. So it's about setting something that works for your budget and your time constraints as well. and set building energy targets and reduce the performance gap wherever possible. Would you say it's quite common, Billy, in your experience with, I know you've done a lot in terms of helping people start that journey. Would you say it's quite common for people to set targets that might be a bit too ambitious and have realized the task has got a lot of undertaking and they need to think about the time a little bit?
I think that's a very good point. I think we've got to start somewhere. So if we're really seriously looking at net zero by 2050, my personal opinion is that's impossible without some grant funding, or certainly funding behind that. It's got to be backed up by money. We're going through, it may or may not be a recession. So cash isn't readily available. Technology is moving on quickly across the space. So things are moving on and new technologies will be available over the next 10 to 15 years. So I guess to answer your question, Emily, yeah, it's difficult. People may not want to start because they may want to hold on for some money to help them fit stuff. But unless we make a pledge, then we're never going to achieve anything. So for my health, I've stopped drinking. Unless I made that pledge to stop drinking, then obviously I'm not going to make any progress. So I kind of relate it to that, if you like. We really must make a commitment to save, certainly in scope 1, which is the first phase, reducing our own emissions to affect climate change, and then going through the next 2 phases, how our suppliers and the people we work with are using their energy. So it should have a knock-on effect, but we've got to make that choice, and it starts from the top down, by the way. So hopefully your boards, your trustees, anybody else involved at higher level meetings will commit to a net zero journey and hopefully agree how important that is.
Thank you, Billy. And if anyone's got any questions or needs any help or just wants to ask a question about best way to start this journey, that's what we're here for. So do feel free to get in touch with us or put your questions in the chat. This takes us on to a final couple points of different ways of thinking about how you can get the best out of your energy contracts and your current energy provisions. And one of the things that we wanted to touch on today was collective purchasing. We've been asked a lot recently by different partnership organisations that we work with, and we're really trying at the moment at Utility Aid to support the third sector in any way we can with things like collective purchasing. So we know that rising energy costs are a concern for most organisations at present, and we want to offer advice and guidance specifically through our collective purchasing offer. And in this climate, it can be difficult to find the right tariff, contract and supplier that matches your appetite for risk as an organisation and your budget requirements that you have in place. So one of the ways in which we're trying to tackle that is putting people through to our national charity tender, where you get the benefit of receiving our value-added services. So we just wanted to go through a couple of those with you and explain what those are. So if you go through a collective purchasing arrangement via ourselves for the national charity tender, what you do get in return is validation of all of your invoices, which is what we discussed earlier. That's where that big saving came from, over the 4.7 million. That's from just reviewing people's invoices and identifying discrepancies, because they do happen. And dealing with all supplier queries. So I'm sure many people have dealt with supplier queries or have had complaints from their team members about dealing with energy suppliers. At Utility Aid, we try and take that away from you and put that with our team, who are really experienced and work with account managers at the supplier directly. Focus on the provision of your CRC data. Provision of ongoing market intelligence, so the benefit of knowing what's going on in the markets, how your prices could be potentially affected. Full access to your dedicated account manager, so everything would be with one person for you to make it a little bit easier. Assistance with additions and deletions of contracts, so you might have a situation where you need to put a change of tenancy through, a building's not yours anymore and you need to get rid of it. We can help you with all of that. VAT and CCL assistance. So again, the charges. So if you do discover that you're actually meant to be paying a reduced rate, we can assist you with that. And finally, smart meter installation services, which is something we've already discussed today and the importance of it, and meter installation and removals. And we know how painful that process is. So this sort of provision puts all of those services in one place for you and allows you to benefit from them. Which then takes us on to void management services. We have been working within the housing association space for a very, very long time at Utility Aid, and we're really passionate about trying to make your jobs as easy as possible when it comes to working with suppliers and dealing with tenancies. So we know that managing multiple properties with multiple suppliers can be daunting, time-consuming, and quite stressful, to be honest. So what we've introduced is a void management service, which the idea is for us to be that person in between you and the supplier. So we liaise with both the housing officers and the suppliers in order to manage any changes in tenancies and unoccupied or abandoned properties that you have. And that usually happens within one working day. We have a supplier account updated to the correct occupancy details that are entered. And this is something that can all be done through a bespoke portal, saving you time, saving the housing manager time, and with a one-day turnaround and a unique login that's tailor-made for you on this void portal software service. Billy, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything about voids, because again, this is something you've had a lot of experience in dealing with.
So yeah, the reason we got involved in the void platform was to help housing authorities, associations and landlords turn their properties around as quickly as possible to get the people that needed the accommodation housed as quickly as possible. So it's not a cash cow for us. It's providing a service to help people. Now, I'd just like to bring in there, I was once on my way back from Scotland when I had a phone call from Scottish and Southern Energy, who have, I don't know, 15,000 employees, and they accused me of competing with them on our void services, which was run by 6 people in an office in Sleaford. Now, I suddenly realised that we were doing the right thing. And what happens is that SSE, British Gas, offered a free service to housing providers where they would do the voids. And the only reason they were doing that was to keep the domestic supply. So that means that when a new tenant moved in, they were automatically with British Gas, which really you need choice, and you need to make sure that the people who need it most are on the best tariffs. I think that's really important. So without throwing the cat amongst the pigeons, I think Utilita have an offering at the moment on voids, which is great. Haven't seen the results of it yet, but again, one of the most expensive domestic rates that are out there. So that's something that everybody should be aware of.
Thank you, Billy. So that's our void management service and ways in which we can help you. That brings us to basically the end of our presentation today, so we can open up the floor for questions on anything that we have discussed today. If anyone, I would think there's something already in the chat actually, Cassandra.
Yeah, I think there's conversations all going, so it looks like that. Yeah, answering questions as we go, which is great. Yeah, no, that was really good. Covered a lot there. Yeah, I think definitely some quick wins in there, which is really good. That 4.7 million figure just on incorrect billing is, yeah, crazy, but yeah, really good that you've managed to achieve that. Yeah, so I think we can maybe talk over that question that's in the chat just now, but if anybody else does have anything, then please feel free to raise your hand as well, or stick anything else in the chat. So I think we had a question for Robert, which Sally Ann has answered. I don't know if you want to come in, Sally Ann.
Yeah, I'd like to answer Robert's second question as well. At this moment in time, suppliers have the luxury of choice, and a number of suppliers are deciding they don't want to work with housing associations anymore. The reason being is cost to serve. So what suppliers are being very picky about is they're really wanting to engage with people where it's 1 meter, really high supply, and no real action for them to do, so they make the most out of that contract. Because the supplier market is getting very limited, we've had a lot of suppliers leave. So recently we've had Scottish Power withdraw out the half-hourly market, we've had British Gas withdraw out of the larger market. It's left the supply pool quite small, and the fact of suppliers who are what we believe to be credit-worthy suppliers, so ones that you would actually want to work with and not ones where there's a risk. But these suppliers, because everybody's wanting to place business, they can now be choosy, and at the moment quite a number of them have said that they don't really see housing associations as being that attractive, and that's why we've been working very closely with suppliers. So with Utility Aid, SSE will work with us because they know that we do a lot of the admin. So for us, if you come to Utility Aid, they'll work with housing associations because we do an awful lot of the admin, because we validate all the invoices, we do the admin, we have single point of contact within the suppliers. So they'll take housing associations via Utility Aid. If you go directly, like you've said, sometimes you're having issues, because if you go direct, then you haven't got someone who's doing all the validation in the background for you. So the admin would fall with the actual supplier. And this is where, at the moment in time, it is very hard out there, and it is about building relationships, and that's why we build relationships with the top suppliers to make sure that if you do go in contract with them, they're not likely to go bust, but also you'll get that aftercare service, and it works for both sides.
Great, thank you very much.
I hope that answered it.
Yeah, no, I hope so. Hope it did, Robert. Yeah, I mean, I guess again, a lot of what you talked over kind of chimes with things that we've been hearing from members generally as well. One thing I was wondering, because I know it has been a big concern in terms of the non-domestic support. We have a lot of our members who have communal heating systems, even just communal contracts. And I mean, yeah, I think kind of Emily's presentation showed the complexity of the support that's available, and trying to figure out exactly what you're eligible for, what the discount will be. Our members then have that challenge of trying to then explain that to tenants and why they maybe aren't getting the same reductions that other domestic customers are getting. Have you been finding that as well in terms of the support scheme and how to explain it?
We've done quite a lot of question and answers for housing associations who work with ourselves. So I did quite a lot of analysis between if they got the £400 for being a domestic customer, or if they sat on a commercial contract. And it depends when the housing association did the commercial contract, but all the ones I've done so far, the residents have been actually better off on your contracts, because you get access to commercial rates that domestic customers don't get access to. So even with the £400, the ones that I've analysed for housing associations have actually been better off on a commercial contract with like EBRS discount. The current discounts are not that good. So EBDS, it comes in after April the 1st. Not many people are going to qualify for that. And anybody who took a contract out post Boxing Day won't qualify, because the wholesale price is below the government threshold to get the grants. But if any of your housing associations do need help with it all, I can actually help them with the analysis. And we do have sheets, frequently asked question sheets that we've produced for housing associations to help you. And also in the past, I have actually come and spoke to residents where they won't believe a word you're saying, because they don't think you're telling them the truth. But I have actually gone and spoken to groups of residents and let them have that question and answer session or webinars with them, so they can ask the questions direct about the difference between a commercial contract and a domestic contract, and why do they see this difference, and why don't they get the £400. However, there is we did quite a lot of lobbying through the MEUC, with the House of Lords, and through the energy ministers, with regards to residents should, because in the old days when they got the £400 directly from local authorities, they received it that time around, and then this time around they didn't receive it. We have been doing lobbying so that they can receive it, and they are looking at opening up that legislation to enable people to get access into that grant funding. But nothing's come forward yet, because again, the energy minister, he changed, well, we've had about 6, I think it is, in the last year. So every time they change, the legislation gets a bit knocked back again. So as soon as we find out a way, what they were doing is it was going to be by an application online, but then nothing came out. So I'll keep lobbying for that in the background. And then as soon as we get those links, we'll send them to you so you can distribute them out, because I know also the problem that you've got is a lot of people are vulnerable who live in housing association and they won't be able to understand it. So we'll work with you on that of how it's going to work and distribute it as soon as it becomes available.
Just to add to that, Sal, as well, I think, you know, 25 years of inaction has put us where we are now. So the ministers that are there, we pretty much all know what they're like. But yeah, we should have had a plan years ago. The positive side, Sizewell C coming on could make a difference, and that may help us with supply issues. So yeah, it's nuclear. So nuclear's really green apart from the waste. So we're caught between a rock and a hard place, but I think the more people that get on board, like Sal says, the lobbying, everybody talking about the issues, hopefully someone will come along and with a plan, a master plan, as I like to put it.
Well, here's hoping.
But I will send you over, by all means, I'll send you over some of the literature that I've done, and then all you need to do is really rebrand it. So, but I don't mind doing that. And if you wanted to put it in your public areas so that your residents can read it, that's totally acceptable as well.
Yep, no, that's great. That's really helpful. And I know there's certainly members that have already pointed your direction. So yeah, I think this is going to be kind of ongoing. I think last I heard that the kind of portal for applications for that, the £400 was meant to be end of this month. I'm not sure if there's been a further update on that as of yet. But
there's been no updates recently at all for it on the actions that they were going to take. So it is something that I'll just keep lobbying. We're seeing the ministers again on, I think it's April. We've got the next meeting at the MEUC. So again, it'll be the House of Lords. So we'll be able to try and get that way into via the House of Lords into the House of Commons to try and get that still done for people like vulnerable people who are living in housing associations. But by all means, if you need me to help you with any calculations, we'll help you with that.
Great, thank you. I should say we're also hoping to have Ofgem out to visit some of our members in the next couple of weeks as well to explain these kind of more difficult situations that maybe are a bit more.
By all means, we can prepare some questions for you as well.
Oh, that would be really good, because
yeah.
I was at an event where I was told I wasn't allowed to ask the chief executive of Ofgem any questions. So yeah, that would be awesome. We could slip a couple in there for you.
Housing associations, yeah, we don't mind putting it into the words for you so that you will get some real good answers back out of it that you actually do need with regards to some of the support mechanisms that are being put in place. And especially end users, how do end users get the support?
That'd be ideal, thank you.
And also the recent talk about helping vulnerable people with their energy supply and their energy contracts and their energy costs. That's a major one, really. That shouldn't be that hard to do. If you can sign up to a register, as you can for other people, then it should be a quick decision on you being allowed. What you need is either a national owned supplier. It's maybe something you could do in Scotland, you know, that could actually feed the tariffs through to the people. Hey, who knows? But there's sort of questions we'd be asking down the south as well, won't we, Emily?
We will.
Yeah, I think that one kind of got put on the back burner in Scotland here, the public owned energy company.
Yeah, you're going for a bit more of a turmoil at the moment. So
yeah, and I suppose the other thing, I know you mentioned the 2050 net zero targets as well. We've actually got 5 years less up here as well. So,
so you've got a lot against you at the moment.
Yes. Okay, we've got kind of 10 minutes or so left. Is any other questions from the audience anybody would like to ask?
Doesn't have to be about the presentation. If anybody's got any questions in obviously if it's energy related, that would be useful. But yeah, please feel free to ask us.
Yeah, it certainly seems like there's kind of useful information that we can send out as part of the follow-up from today as well. So we'll make sure everyone has the things we've mentioned and contact details and whatnot. I think there's even things that come to my mind. The G8 group, for example, I know I've done some work already looking at the kind of energy use in their offices, and kind of they've done a kind of collaborative project on that, so we can maybe include the links to that if anybody's interested as well. Yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions at the moment, but again, I think that probably means that you just covered so much there that it was very comprehensive.
Well, Cassandra, if you don't have to be a customer to get in touch with Utility Aid to seek our support, just like to point that out. And there are other brokers out there, as in this case I was on ITV. Happy to try and help people. That's what we're here to do.
No, that's great, and thank you. That was a really good session. Again, we kind of covered quite a lot in a short space of time, which is excellent. Okay, then. So yeah, I think we'll just round things off there. Thank you again to our speakers from Utility Aid for coming along today. As I say, we'll kind of send out some follow-up information, including the recording of the video. There'll also be a little poll popping up on your screen just now, and we'd really appreciate if you could fill that in, please. Kind of really helps us with our event planning in the future. But otherwise, thank you very much for coming along today.
Thank you.
Thank you.